We are back with finally Black and White. Now, I've been trying to avoid this for a decent bit, mostly because I think Black and White 1, team building wise, is very uninteresting. And it's such a letdown to go from what is, in my opinion, a Gen 3 greatness to, like, even though Fire Red Leaf range kind of low, to Sinnoh, which is great, and to Heart Gold Soul Silver, which my personal preference, to now Black and White. And Black 2 and White 2, which we'll get around to, are inherently a lot better. But I do think this is a very low point for team building. Now, of course, I will be going with the pre-evolution, even though some of these are available at different times. And you will probably end up finding them fully evolved versus not. We're going to ignore that. Also, real quick, we're going to get rid of a lot, and I do mean a lot, of unusable Pokemon. And this is a big problem that is pretty prominent uh, in Pokemon Black and White, is there's a lot of Pokemon that are just not usable. Uh, and not to say as in like, oh, you can't use them at all. Technically, you could use the legendary Pokemon, but we're just going to skip all the genies along with the the box or the mascots, mostly because they're not available for that long at all. We'll talk about the warrior trio, which I think technically in Black and White isn't that available, but they're still around. I think, yeah, I think that's it of the unavailable. Which I'll be brutally honest, that's kind of it in general. But we'll see. We'll see as we go along. I'm clicking to make sure. I have a list to check because I usually build pretty similarly as we go along. But let's talk about starts. So this is a very uninteresting starter trio at first glance. I do think that we have possibly one of the worst starters in history here. Maybe another video down the line, wink wink, in Snivy. This is actually just a mid Pokemon. It's really sad because if even looking at the other grass types, there's better options. And this is before like the fairy types introduced. Lilligant is trapped into literally grass type attacks, and it's still somehow better. You have like you have a tank. You both tanks are better. Like, it's really sad to be a Snivy fan. I don't know why you would be one. Tepig, I say it weirdly a lot, is actually relatively interesting. This has a lot to do with fire type dominance, and also fighting types being somewhat useful for most parts of the game. It kind of falls off at the end, but fire types are very, very good. Plus, it fulfills a very unique role, which we'll talk about. That's not necessarily prominent in Black and White, but it is there. It is kind of the health sponge. With the full evolution into Emboar, it is a health just attacker, is how I would put it, which is very interesting. And Oshawott, which funnily is always going to be noticeable no matter what. You can probably argue for interesting because water types are actually not that prominent. We'll talk about the water types as they go, and there's not that many that really fit the role. I mean, there's of course the prominent water ground, but there's also a lot more grass types that can kind of abuse it. A lot more weird, just move pool things that could really mess it up. But yeah, this is kind of how the starters sit. I really don't like to talk about these starters because they're really not fun to play immediately coming after Gen 4. If this is your first like interaction with Pokemon is Gen 5 Black and White, it's not a bad experience to pick your starter, but this is easily one of the worst starters. Like, I think the only other one that gets close to how bad it is Chikorita, and even then, I think Chikorita still has a use because of the post game being prominent. Now, I do want to also state before we go even further, there is a post game to Black and White, and I feel like it is more separated than even like the Sinnoh games and even the, not Johto, but even Hoenn. I feel like it has a lot more post game. I'm gonna leave most of it out because I don't think it really matters. You're gonna be picking up a lot of like other Pokemon for it, like Dragonite's pretty useful, so on and so forth. But this is mostly just main game. Patrat is replaceable to mid. As a normal type, it kind of gets outclassed by the other normal type you can find pretty early. And normal types aren't too prominent, but like Cinccino is right there. Uh, and it's really like the flying Pokemon actually just do great. Buffalin come. We'll talk about the problem there, but like overall, I feel like there's other normal types that do better. It has a really fast hypnosis on evolution. Yeah, Lillipup, I actually give a lot of credit to. I think it is surprisingly buildable. For a normal type, it does take a little bit to get going, but I think it has a decent move pool and it does have these kind of useful just niches. Also, with the right ability, it does get intimidate on full evolution. So hey, very very useful. We have the dark type, which is the only reason it's unreplaceable. Uh, Liepard is not good. It'll never be good. It's just fast. That's basically it. Uh, does middling damage, which is kind of like Snivy technically outclasses both these. I just think for wasting your starter slot, it's really brutal. Next, we have the Elemental Monkeys, which I'm going to be brutally honest, I hate their design philosophy, but they aren't all the way bad. We do have a specific order that I think works for all of these, and that's mostly because the water, there's not that many water types. Fire type, surprisingly, is the lowest, and we'll talk about a couple of the other fire types that specifically come about because they're actually really good, but this one just doesn't do enough damage. Pansear is not good. Uh, Pansage is a little bit better. It has a lot more usability than even the Snivy line, but it also kind of falls away into like the late game with the stats not really matching up, and then being a water type just automatically puts you pretty high in this game. We have the Psychic type, Health Sponge Psychic type. I'd love to say that it's like replaceable, and it's true, and that's basically where it's going to play. I thought about playing in mid, but I feel like that's being too harsh. I do think it does insanely well. You definitely heard my keyboard there. I kind of messed up, but I do think it does an insane job at like just being a really good health sponge, and that's all it really needs to do. We have Pidove, which is one of the worst birds. I think everybody kind of agrees. There's another flying normal type that is not super late in the game, but you can kind of get that's just better. Um, but yeah, and then we have the Zeb Striker line, which is our first interesting that actually feels interesting. A lot of this has to do with there finally being a good electric physical move. Zeb Striker has decent speed and really good attack, and Wild Charge is a good electric move. Problem is, it's not really doing anything besides electric normal, and that's basically it. Like, I really wish there was more it could do, but it could stay here as one of the only early electric types. And eventually you do get access to Emolga, but even then I do think it's worse. And we'll talk about the better electric types as we go. Technically, this is unavailable for us here, so we'll talk about this one. With Eviolite, it's just replaceable. This is going to come down to Eviolite being really busted, but when it comes to being stuck as the middle stage, it's just not good. We have, I think this is Woobat, right? I always get these swapped for some reason. Woobat and just Swoobat. Really good flying psychic type, but it's just kind of noticeable. It doesn't do enough damage. Even with, like, Simple and Calm Mind, I feel like it takes a little too long to get going. It does have a really good move pool with access to Psychic at 41, and I believe Air Slash at 32. So it is going to be hitting on both stabs really, really well. But its damage overall is reliant on the power of those moves versus its actual damaging stats. It's fast, and it can hit a little bit decently, a little better than some of these, but I think it's just noticeable. It's one of my favorite Pokemon to introduce, which I always get swapped. Now, of course, we're going to talk about Drillbur into Excadrill. One of the more popular Pokemon, of course, of Gen 5, being that it is a terrifying menace. This is what I like to call the Garchomp of Gen 5, or kind of... Garchomp is a little different, but maybe Gliscor, but there's a few Pokemon that kind of fit this mold that they really just break the game that they're in. And I feel like Excadrill does that. You eventually become a Ground Steel type, the best Ground Steel type to have existed at this point, and it's not that late of a level up or evolution. You also get access to Stab Dig. Metal Claw is available pretty early. Slash I know is in there, and I think you get Rock Slide on evolution, or it's right before then. Overall, Drillbur is fantastic when you get it, and it becomes fantastic as it evolves. Really good. Audino is straight up like super mid. It's questionable whether it's unusable, but it does have health tank stuff. Next we have the unusable Conkeldurr, which would be pretty high, and we're actually going to put a little bit of surprise. Girder, I think, in my opinion, fits a very weird niche. Incredibly slow speed. You're talking 40 base speed. But 105 attack is pretty good. Has a decent move pool. It has access to Mach Punch, I'm pretty sure, by level up. Or if it doesn't really matter because it has Eviolite, and it can tank a lot more than you would think. It has a lot of every stat besides speed, and I think it can manage to go decently far. It starts to fall off pretty hard by the time you get to the the end game. But then again, so does literally everything below it, and these guys do not have as strong of a start or even an explosive middle game, which I do think Girder does. It's a really good tank, surprisingly. Next, we have Seismitoad, which is one of the best Pokemon in the game. One, it's a water type, really cool, and it's also a ground type. Problem is, its move pool is pretty mid, which kind of makes me want to put it right here. I was thinking about it. It's also kind of stuck with, like, you try and go with Water Absorb, of course, but overall, I just don't think it has a great move pool to really, like, stand out. It does good. I'm not going to sit here and say it's bad. It's just much more of a next we have Throw and Sock. Now, the reason they're immediately going in here is because they are, funnily enough, a lesser version of Girder in most cases. Yes, they are a little faster, and yes, they technically do hit a little harder depending on how you use them, but Girder with Eviolite does everything that they want to do just as well, and I do think with Eviolite tankiness, there's a little more use in it. Where are we at? Next, we have the... I always forget these two names until Levani. I rarely use this Pokemon, but I do think it has a very noticeable quality. It's Bug Grass, which, oh my god, it's awful. But access to such thing as Leaf Blade and Exeter is interesting. I don't really think we get that many good, like, bug users that actually use its other stab really well. I mean, there's like Crustle, which does use like the Rock Side and Exeter, but I don't know. I feel like Rock type first is more my speed. Next we have the Poison Bug type. I actually think this is a pretty strong Pokemon. It gets access to a lot of really good level up moves. It just takes a little bit to get there. I do think it has the possibility to be a post-game sweeper, which is something in its favor. Whimsicott and Lilligant, we're going to talk about. So technically they're trapped into a trade for a lot of people. Kotsuni is without doubt the worst one. I think it's probably bottom here. Bottom and replaceable. Technically, Snivy is a little better, but hey, you're not sacrificing a starter choice. But I do think Lilligant is really, really strong. Too bad it is locked into only having grass type moves. But hey, it does get Quiver Dance, which means it can, even through resistances, basically trash people and do a fantastic job. Now, that's not to say that, like, when it comes to its restrictions, it's not really, really, like, heavy or whatever. But I do think Quiver Dance makes up for it. Quiver Dance is super powerful. Sorry, I'm texting somebody when I should have already texted. Should have already solved everything. But ignoring that, we're going to go into Basculin, which, if this had its evolution, would be good, but it's kind of just replaceable. It's another physical attacker, but water type, so it does okay. Sandile, I mean, it's one of the super special Pokemon. One of the biggest problems, though, is that super special, you'll start to notice something very, as we talk about Darumaka as well. there's a lot of physical attackers that are like really stand out, and it happens to be that this game there's a lot of overlap. Like we already have two ground types here, so you kind of have to make your choice if you want to build a balanced team. And I do think all three are really good. You have one, fire types are insane, which will organize this properly, but two, the ground types are like, because of their other typings, they do something incredibly unique. Dirt type is actually pretty like useful in this game before it gets nerfed a little bit. Uh, well, actually, it gets increased a bit, but before it gets kind of like changed slightly, I do think Sandile is one of the best users of its dual typing in general. Whereas you're stuck with steel typing as Excadrill, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Uh, Steel typing isn't great. Whereas Ground Dark is just amazing stab. It hits so many super effectives and it does insane. Whereas Maractus doesn't do that fantastic. I do think it's probably top of replaceable, mostly because Lilligant exists, but that's just Maractus in general. Next we have Dwebble. I do think this is an interesting Pokemon, much more of a physical tank. But as we'll talk about it, I don't think Rock Bug is really that good. But hey, that's just me. Um, it's not really just me. It's just the way it is. Next we go into Scraggy. Scraggy's very interesting, especially with access to Moxie or Intimidate. I do think this is probably noticeable. Fighting Dark is really cool. I'd probably put it up here. It's surprisingly powerful for what you get. Has a decent move pool and does great. Sigilith, I actually am going to put in interesting. I feel like this is a very underrated mon. It's kind of forgotten to like the time of Black and White just not being like that prominent in some cases. But like Psychic Flying has already been covered, except this one I feel has a little more power to it. The only issue I think is that being a single stage, it doesn't have like fantastic like stats. Like it does fall behind by the end of it, and while its move pool is great, it's not great because it's a wide variety. It's great because it just fulfills every need. It's not the Swiss Army knife. It's just the exact block to fit in the hole, which goes into, you know, Cofagrigus, which I almost said incorrectly. But ignoring that, Cofagrigus is... So when it comes to Cofagrigus in general, I feel like it could have been great, right? Like I feel like there was something here that would have been fantastic, but it just ultimately fails. When you look at like the ghost typing in general, usually you want a lot of super effectives because ghost type, you know, there's decent amount of normals and dark types. You want to be able to hit them, but you're relying too much on like Hex and Will-O-Wisp early on, and its move pool isn't great, but still a ghost type, so it gets noticeable. Its ability is also really whack. Caracosta, Water Rock, been done before. I do think its tankiness is surprise, and you know, Shell Smash being Shell Smash is incredible, but it's a physical water type attacker with a lot more restrictions, a lot like more setup at times. I do think it's a good Pokemon, but I think I'm going to put it bottom of noticeable. I don't know where Archeops is. Is Archeops even here? It just disappeared. So we have Archon. I think this is just a great Pokemon. Like, it has an interesting gimmick. It's always going to be bottom of interesting because of Defeatist, but man, is it really fun to use the first time by a long shot. It's one of my favorite. We have the pure poison type, which actually is kind of noticeable in this game. I'd probably put it right about here. Garbodor isn't going to win any awards, bringing that phrase back just for the trash, of course. But it does decent amount of damage. It has access to some utility options, Toxic Spikes by level up, and honestly, it's going to take a lot to put it down. It's, of course, as I already said, not fantastic, but yeah. Technically, Zora is not available, so we'll put it in unusable. Technically, they're... So, when it comes to Zora is technically available through certain like means, but we're just gonna ignore it and just ignore it. Next, we have another normal type that I think does better. Uh, the fast normal type, it does. I don't know why I grabbed this. The problem is it evolves by shiny stone, and normal types, by the point you do get access to it, aren't good. So it can sit at the bottom of noticeable just because of that. It has a really cool hidden ability and skill link, but hey. Next, we have Gothitelle, which I do think is the worst psychic type here, uh, or at least of the two we're about to talk about. But I do think it has decent amount of power, and it is a psychic type that does decent job. So I am gonna put it probably like right here. I think it does decent. And we have Solstice, which Ryu Nicholas is one of my favorite Pokemon in Gen 5, and it just sits in interesting. It's really, really strong. Really, really tanky, does a lot. We have Ducklet into Swanna. Water flying that doesn't really get to do much. It does have like a decent, like with Scald being prominent, now it does have a decent utility that like exists, being able to burn, and you're usually faster. But for flying type, honestly, there's gonna be some competition. There's already been some decent competition. We're just gonna put you at the bottom of noticeable. Next, we have the ice cream cone, which surprisingly is only in top of replaceable. I actually think surprisingly it does have a really strong just ice, or not ice ability, but ice attacks that do incredible damage, meaning that it can kind of throw out Blizzard and just do well. Next, we have Deerling, which is very forgettable, but it does have like an okay move pool. I think Maractus is better for a grass type, but as a normal type, it does do a little better. It's really weird to put it. I wouldn't recommend it though. Emolga is really, really okay when you get it, but it falls apart as you go along. There's no evolution to kind of save its middling stats. Its level up move pool is good, but like not, I guess. It does exactly what you need it to do. And for a flying electric type, I feel like it doesn't do enough of what you need it to do. Like I could definitely see it being like right here. I think it's good to when you get it and it just falls apart. Next we go into technically unavailable, though there is a trade in the game for it. Amoonguss. Uh, actually, surprisingly, pretty high up. Has a decent move pool. TM usage in this game being unlimited means it kind of doesn't need to fight for TMs. It's very bulky. It does decent damage. Like I'm trying to think of a reason to actually put it lower. I can't really think of one. Like I'm saying here, like its damage is technically low, but it's gonna survive so much. So we'll put it there. Next we have Frillish into Jellicent. I'm I'm gonna be the arguer here. I think Jellicent is really, really special. It's almost below, but Water Ghost is just super, super nice in this game. Elemental is very hard to use. It's just perfectly mid. A lot of these choices I'm going to come back on, but not come back and change, but we'll talk about. Joltik is also, again, super special. Ferrothorn, surprisingly, besides Ferroseed being a pretty lackluster like experience, once it evolves, it has some stats to play with. So it actually plays like a decent defensive wall. Probably go with Crustle, honestly. Right below it. In game, definitely a little bit restrictive, but not too bad. Next, we have the Kunklang evolutionary line. Pure Steel type, which is cool. Has a lot of setup moves, a lot of decent moves, so probably pretty high, actually, and noticeable, I would say. We have Tynamo, which evolves in Electros with Levitate, which means electric type with no super effectives. Mold Breaker, I don't think is on that many Pokemon, but I do think with its move pool, though kind of limited in Black and White 1, I would probably put it at the very bottom of interesting, which also kind of goes along with its partner. We're going to skip the Elegim line real quick, which Litwick. We'll talk about more of these two as we get to the end, but we have a bit to go. We have Elegim. I actually think this is a really fun Pokemon. Access to decent TMs, which is kind of like the Mr. Mime of this game. It's not like as strong as Alakazam or like even like Espeon in the next gen. But sorry, I had a yawn there. I do think it's actually surprisingly good. I'd probably put it pretty high up, probably like right here. I think it's actually surprisingly good. Access Thunderbolt is a wondrous thing. Uh, Axu, I surprisingly actually pretty good. Uh, Dragon typing being kind of rare, and also its attack stat is massive. It does take a while to get to the level up, but hey, it's available a lot earlier than what we'll talk about. Cubchoo into Baratic, not exactly what I'd call a fantastic ice type, physical ice type at that. We already have a bunch of physical attackers, and I feel like stacking this one is just not great for the game. I want to say it's like right here. I went a little too far. Cryogonal. One of my favorite Pokemon. It just does okay. It's like noticeable to like replaceable. I probably put it like right here. I think it does have some use that is kind of special, but that's about it. Uh oh, Shelma is actually available. Uh, I'm really struggling here. Where do I put this? Um, I kind of want to put it decently high, but it's not like worth much. Yeah, we'll do that. I think it kind of struggles a bit. Stunfisk surprisingly okay. I'd probably just put in replaceable. There's better ground types. There's better electric types. So yeah, probably like right here. I think is fair. It just gets outclassed too hard. Mienfoo into Mienshao is one of the strongest fighting types in the game. Really fast, access to Regenerator. Pick it up. Really, really good. Uh, Druddigon, actually a very interesting Pokemon. Kind of more of a tank build than anything. So I'd probably give it the Girder treatment, except it's a little better on paper. Golurk, I actually think Golurk is really, really strong. Access Shadow Punch Earthquake is just a nasty combo. And it does good damage. It's a little slow, so I'd probably put it at top of noticeable, honestly. Two immunities are always nice. Bisharp or Poniard into Bishop, I think is really cool. It just sucks that it's a pretty late like get no matter what you do. And at the same time, its level of move pool is nothing but dark and a slash and some steel. It's very noticeable at times, but I feel like it kind of falls apart in some cases. We'll put it right under Girder. Girder is kind of being its own breaking point here. Bouffalant comes way too late, though it is one of the better normal types, but at the same time, it comes way too late. So I'm just going to put it above Emolga because I really don't think Emolga deserves to be here. We have Rufflet into Braviary, which we'll also talk about Volby. This is the stronger flying type I talked about earlier. It's probably going to go right there, though it will be bottom. And then Volby is really hard to use in game properly. Like there's toxic strats, of course, and it does have a decent move pool to kind of do damage. But there's so many better Pokemon to do it for. I'd argue that there's a better Dark type by a long shot, pretty readily available. And when it comes to flying, I feel like there's already a few Pokemon that do the same thing. It is very physical, but probably right here. All right, where were we? Okay, we were right here. Heatmore comes pretty late as well, but is a pure fire type, and it's actually okay. Probably replaceable. It is very replaceable by Darumaka, not to mention Tepig. And I think that's literally it for the fire types in this region. Okay, this is surprising. Hustle does have restrictions, of course, but I think Durant is just incredibly strong. Bug, Steel, of course, we know about Scizor, but this is no evolution needed. Iron Head is busted. It's fast. It hits hard. Honestly, there's not much more I can give on it besides it just being a good Steel type that hits hard. Next, we have literally impossible to use in the main game, so we'll just put it right here. Good Pokemon, but yeah, same thing, except I do think you can kind of get this early. If I remember correctly, you can kind of. Or maybe that's Black 2 and White 2, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I think this is actually pretty low as well. Cool. And we have the trio. I think the Swords of Justice are available in Black and White, or I might just be mixing it Black 2 and White 2. but we'll organize based on how I feel about them. Virizion okay. It's kind of replaceable, like not because of the stat lines. Of course, it's really good, but there's other grass types that I think fulfill its need much more. And the fighting types already covered. Cobalion, being steel fighting's okay. It doesn't really get a lot to do in the boss fights it would be uh, in either game, which we'll talk about. Black two, white two down the line. Probably a little bit down. I do think quad weak to flying is a problem. And then Terrakion, which I think is the best of all of them, we will put it like pretty high up and noticeable. It's really, really strong. And that's basically the list. We're going to go through a nice little overview of the super special and interesting because we have some organization to do. My personal favorite Pokemon in this game is always going to go to Sandile. I think Sandile is too incredible. Not only are you packing ground dark, but it has amazing stats abilities to boot. Next is probably going to be Darumaka. I think fire types are incredibly strong. And with just sheer force, it's super busted. Next is going to be Joltik. Frillish will be next. Mienfu and Excadrill into Durant. Now, a lot of this has to do with my personal preference. I think Jellicent is incredibly busted for this game. Access to, just water ghost is too strong. And Joltik is Electric Bug, which surprisingly is one of the best special attackers with Compound Ice Thunder. Really insane. I'm going to put Sigilith pretty high up. Tynamo is always going to be at the bottom, in my opinion. Wick as well. Solstice is going to move up. And honestly, I think that's basically it. I was thinking about maybe I need to raise some Pokemon, but honestly, I like where they sit. And as you can see, there's already a huge problem. There's a very high replaceable tier, which could be me being nitpicky and biased, which, yeah, I am. But Noticeable also grew a bit, and the Interesting just doesn't have enough Pokemon to make a very interesting team. You can see a lot of overlap. We have the Fire overlap, Ground literally in the same thing. Psychic type, I mean, that's the only Psychic type, but like Electric type overlap, even Ghost type overlap, Fire type overlap, Flying type overlap in the same tier, Electric type, which you can see there's a lot of overlap that just doesn't need to be there. And that's why this is kind of short. I really don't think I need to explain that it's not really my preferred game by a long shot when it comes to team building, but I do think it's noteworthy to kind of talk about how this isn't really that fulfilling of a squad. You have too much overlap, and the Pokemon are sometimes very, very annoying to level up and get to the very end, especially with the new EXP curve, which I didn't mention the whole time, but will come up in Black 2 and White 2 much more. Because some Pokemon from before would be much easier to get, but the EXP curve changes that. That's it for this time. We will have a much longer video for Black 2 and White 2 because there's a lot more Pokemon and a lot more options. And also a lot more fun, in my opinion.